It wasn't until the next morning that Addison realized he had nothing clean to wear. His company requires a uniform for work. He has 2 sets. One was still sitting in the washer, and the other, which he wore yesterday, was already starting to smell. "Chloe, why didn't you hang up my clothes?" he asked, his voice laced with anger. I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't I ask you to hang them up yesterday morning? You didn't do it?" Addison was speechless. He must have assumed that, like last time, I would see the unhung laundry, rewash it, and hang it up for him. He never expected that I would stop enabling him, that I'd just let his clothes sit in the washing machine for a day and a night. When Addison finally pulled the clothes out, the stench almost knocked him over. "Chloe, did you do this on purpose? Last time I forgot to hang the laundry, you noticed right away. This time you deliberately let my clothes sit in there all day, didn't you? I'd never met anyone so shameless." "And you?" I shot back. "Did you deliberately not hang them up? You figured that if you didn't do it, I would, so you just decided not to bother, knowing he was in the wrong?" Addison could only pull on yesterday's dirty uniform and head to work. 7. I thought after these last couple of days, Addison might finally learn his lesson. But then, I overheard a conversation between Addison and one of his buddies. "Man, I'm so over it. It's just a bunch of little things, and she's constantly on my case about it. If she cooks, I have to do the dishes. If she does the dishes, I have to give our son a bath. If she puts the laundry in, I have to hang it up. Why? It's such a small thing. Does it really have to be me? Can't she just do it herself? When my mom was here, she never asked me to do a single thing." I couldn't hear what his friend said on the other end, but whatever it was, it just made Addison angrier. "You think I haven't tried that? I used to just drag my feet. Not do the dishes, not hang the laundry. And you know what happened? She stopped making me dinner. She only washes her own clothes and Leo's. I'm serious, man. I'm so done. If she hadn't gotten pregnant, you think I would have married her? I must have been cursed to end up with her." I stood just outside the study door, hearing every single word of his rant. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. So that was it. The only reason he married me was because I was pregnant, and I was foolish enough to think it was for love. Especially with his mom being so wonderful, we never had any of the typical mother-in-law drama. So I just assumed that my relationship with my husband was fine too. I never imagined this is how Addison truly felt about me. The truth is, he knew exactly what he was doing all along. He was doing it on purpose. If he despises me that much, then maybe it's time to let go. I stood frozen outside the study door, the wooden frame digging into my palm as I clung to it for support. Addison's words echoed in my ears like shards of glass. "If she hadn't gotten pregnant, you think I would have married her? I must have been cursed to end up with her." Each syllable carved a deeper wound, raw and unforgiving. For 3 years, I'd convinced myself we were building a life together, that his laziness was just a bad habit, a leftover from being coddled by his mother. But this wasn't laziness. It was contempt. The study door creaked slightly, and I stumbled back, quick to wipe the tears that had escaped before he could see them. I didn't want him to see me break. Not now, not ever. When Addison emerged, his phone still pressed to his ear, he barely glanced at me, his brow furrowed as he muttered, "Yeah, I'll call you later. She's being ridiculous again." He brushed past me, his shoulder bumping mine with deliberate carelessness, and vanished into the living room, where his phone screen lit up with another notification. I stood in the hallway, my chest heaving. For a moment, I considered screaming at him, throwing his words back in his face, demanding answers. But what was the point? He'd already laid bare his soul, and it was ugly, empty, and full of resentment. Instead, I took a deep, shuddering breath and forced myself to walk into the kitchen, where Leo's half-eaten bowl of cereal still sat on the counter. I cleaned it slowly, methodically, letting the warm water from the faucet soothe my trembling hands. This wasn't just about selective hearing anymore. This was about a man who had never loved me, who had trapped himself in a marriage out of obligation, and who was taking his bitterness out on the family he'd never wanted. But I wasn't going to let him destroy me. I'd played his game of silence, and now it was time to change the rules. 8. That evening, I picked Leo up from daycare as usual. He ran toward me, his small arms outstretched, and I lifted him into a hug, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. "Mommy, did Daddy remember to bring my toy truck home?" he asked, his eyes wide with hope. I'd asked Addison to grab it from the living room shelf that morning. Leo had left it there after playing before bed. I set him down gently, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I'm not sure, buddy. Let's check when we get home." But I already knew the answer. Addison hadn't heard me that morning, just like he hadn't heard me 100 times before. When we walked through the front door, the apartment was dark except for the glow of the TV in the living room. Addison was sprawled on the sofa, a half-eaten pizza box on the coffee table, his phone balanced on his chest. Leo's toy truck was still on the shelf, exactly where it had been. "Daddy!" Leo shouted, running toward him. Addison grunted, his eyes never leaving the screen. Leo climbed onto the sofa next to him, tugging at his sleeve. "Daddy, did you get my truck?" Addison sighed, swatting Leo's hand away. "Not now, Leo. I'm watching something." Leo's lower lip trembled. "But Mommy asked you this morning." I leaned against the doorframe watching. This was the man who thought my son's happiness was an afterthought, who couldn't be bothered to lift a finger for the child he'd helped create. Something in me hardened, something cold and resolute. "Addison," I said, my voice calm, too calm. He didn't respond. I took a step forward, repeating his name louder. "Addison." He finally looked up, irritation flickering across his face. "What, can't you see See, I'm busy. Leo asked you a question, and I asked you this morning to get his truck. Why didn't you do it? He rolled his eyes. It's just a toy. He has a million others. Leo's shoulders slumped, and he climbed off the sofa, walking back to me with tears in his eyes. I knelt down, wrapping him in my arms. It's okay, baby. Mommy will get it for you. I stood up, shooting Addison a glare that could have frozen fire. And for the record, it's not just a toy. It's important to him. But I guess that doesn't matter to you. Addison scoffed, turning back to the TV. Whatever. You're just looking for a reason to fight. I didn't argue. Instead, I took Leo to his room, grabbed his truck, and spent the next hour playing with him on the floor, listening to his laughter and pushing aside the ache in my chest. When it was time for bed, I read him 3 stories instead of 1, kissing his forehead as he drifted off to sleep. When I walked back into the living room, Addison was still on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. The pizza box was still on the table, grease soaking through the cardboard. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed a trash bag, cleaned up the mess, and wiped down the table until it shone. Then I went to the bedroom, closed the door, and climbed into bed, turning my back to the empty space next to me. Addison came in an hour later, his phone still in his hand. He tossed it on the nightstand and climbed into bed, sighing loudly. You're really not going to talk to me? He asked, his voice laced with annoyance. I didn't answer. I just closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. Let him wonder. Let him feel the silence he'd inflicted on me for so long. 9. The next morning, I woke up early. I made breakfast for Leo, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, his favorite, and packed his lunch with extra cookies. When Addison stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, he looked around expectantly. Where's my breakfast? I didn't look up from spreading peanut butter on Leo's toast. I only made enough for me and Leo. He frowned. Are you serious? Again? I shrugged. You never asked me to make you any. And besides, you had pizza last night. I'm sure you're not hungry. Leo looked up from his pancake. Daddy, do you want a bite of mine? Addison's face softened for a split second. No, thanks, buddy. Daddy's fine. But I saw the flash of hurt in his eyes, hurt that his son was offering him kindness he couldn't be bothered to give in return. After Leo and I finished eating, I helped him get dressed and grabbed his backpack. Addison, I need you to drop Leo off at daycare today. I have an early meeting at work. I'd cleared it with my boss the night before. She'd been understanding when I told her I needed to adjust my schedule. It wasn't a lie exactly, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I wanted to see if he'd actually follow through on something that involved his son. Addison blinked. Wait, what? I have a meeting too. I can't drop him off. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't mention a meeting yesterday. And even if you do, it's your turn. I've dropped him off every single day since he started preschool. You can reschedule, or you can take him with you. I don't care, but I'm leaving in 5 minutes. He stared at me, his mouth agape. You're not serious. I am. Leo, say goodbye to Daddy. Leo hugged Addison's leg. Bye, Daddy. Don't forget my truck tomorrow. Addison sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine. I'll drop him off. But this is ridiculous, Chloe. I didn't respond. I kissed Leo's cheek, grabbed my purse, and headed out the door. As I walked to my car, I couldn't help but smile. It was a small victory, but it felt good, like I was finally taking back control.